GoPro. Julie, yesterday not a good day for GoPro. The stock went down almost 20% on some lackluster earnings, and yet today, surprisingly, it kind of made up some of that ground. So what message do we take out of that? Do you think that investors think that maybe the drone ends up carrying this company?
So I'd be surprised if that's the case. I think it's a tough market, right? Our Forrester research data shows that only 12% of consumers own any kind of a standalone video recorder. And whether they're selling GoPros or they're selling drones to professional movie producers, it's still a relatively niche market.
So any idea why maybe investors weren't as pessimistic today as they were yesterday?
Well, it's hard to speak for investors and what they view as a bargain.
Right. Okay, well, another company, obviously, that had a big week, Facebook. Earnings were great in almost every respect, and yet the stock lost about 8% over the week over this possibility that the company raised that it was running out of places to put ads. How are investors supposed to take that?
Yeah, so I think it's always difficult to say what's in an investor's mind, but I believe that Facebook's still in a very strong position. When we look at the time that consumers spend on mobile devices, Facebook still owns about 1 in 6 of every one of those minutes, or as we call mobile moments, and they're yet to really even monetize Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp or some of their other properties. So I'd be a lot more optimistic about what the long-term upside is. They've got a lot of space to grow into, so to speak. As part of their mobile portfolio.
What about television? The company said this week that it might use its audience network to bring its ads and other companies' ads onto over-the-top services on devices like the Roku or the Apple TV. Could that be a big business for Facebook?
So it's a possibility because Facebook really has two things. So Facebook has a very large mobile audience, which they're doing their best to monetize, but Facebook also has a lot of data about us as consumers, what we like, who our friends are, where we go, and things like that. To the extent that they can use that data to make the advertising more valuable on these other platforms, sounds like a good opportunity to me.
Right. So I want to go back to hardware for a moment, and we talked about GoPro, but overall it wasn't a great week for hardware in the valley. I mean, you had Fitbit, right, declaring a possible shortfalls in sales over the holiday season. We just reported that the hardware partner at the Y Combinator incubator has left, and Magic Leap was making an augmented reality system down in Florida. It's lost its chief marketing officer. Can you connect the dots here? What is happening among these smaller hardware makers?
So I think it's always, first of all, hardware is always very difficult to do, and it's very hard to make money just doing hardware. And there's a few factors in play there. And the other part of it is when consumers buy one of these devices, they have this expectation of an outcome, right? So even if you ship a piece of hardware, you're constantly in the mode of shifting software updates and services and trying to help consumers get that outcome that they expect. I think when we look specifically at Fitbit, and we look at what we're forecasting over the next 5 years, we're not really forecasting much in terms of increased sales. While the overall market is going to double from about 1 in 6 consumers having a wearable device today to 1 in 3, smartwatches are going to capture the vast majority of that upside here over the next 5 years. And they're actually preferred by Gen Y and some of the younger consumers coming into the market.
So quick last question, what's the future for Fitbit? Can it exist as a standalone company?
So the big opportunity for Fitbit is if at some point insurance companies either mandate that each of us wears one of these devices or gives us some huge financial benefit for doing so, and there's just more in it for the consumer. But no, I don't believe there's enough self-motivated consumers to make this a much bigger market.